Marcus was born to exceptionally young parents. His mother was only 16 years old at the time of his birth, which means that by the time Marcus put on his graduation cap, his parents were only 38. Life changed after graduation when his father got him a job at a friend's company. Marcus adapted well there, earning a decent living. Nothing extravagant, but as they say, it covered the costs. The company specialized in window installation, while Marcus was striving for more, striving to delve into his field of knowledge. The stumbling block for him was his lack of experience. Having found no other doors opening the way to the desired career, he decided to stay where he was. One day, during one of his outings, he came across her. She asked to make an entrance to the balcony, and Marcus went to take measurements. Elise charmed him so much that during their next meeting, he brought a lovely bouquet of flowers and sweets. Their meetings continued, and 6 months later, Marcus proposed to Elisa. The following summer, they celebrated their wedding. They were both 25 years old when they had their first child, a son, whom they named Axel in honor of their proud new grandfather. Elise was absolutely steeped in motherhood, dedicating herself wholly to their child. To Marcus, it almost felt like he had been shoved into the background, which left him feeling a bit miffed and overlooked. His mom reassured him, telling him that this was entirely typical during the first year of a baby's life, and that it was just a phase that would pass. And wouldn't you know it, she was right. As their son's first birthday approached, Elise started refining her sense of self. She began dolling herself up, pulling out the makeup and stylish clothes again. Her body had changed too, so much more womanly, and Marcus couldn't help but admire her with newfound desire. Before long, Elise was adamant about them moving to roomier digs. "There's barely any space here for an infant. Let's get something bigger. I'm pretty sure the folks will chip in," she once mentioned to her husband. Marcus nodded in agreement since he had been mulling it over for quite some time. He wasn't too fond of the idea of raising a kid in a cramped one-bedroom flat. As time flew by, their son started to grow. Fast forward 3 years, and Elise found herself taking Axel to preschool while she went back to her career. The family settled into a fresh routine that everyone was gradually adjusting to. Elise felt exhausted from work and found herself with less time at home than she used to have. Meanwhile, Marcus was frustrated that, after a strenuous day on the job, he had to pitch in with preparing dinner and doing the dishes. The new lifestyle was taking its toll on them, and it became clear that changes were needed to help them balance their lives more effectively. Each day brought new challenges, but with perseverance, they hoped to create a harmonious and thriving household. "Elia, can you pack me a lunch?" her husband asked. "I'm swamped, Elia. Please, I need to get ready for work," Marcus pleaded. Elise grimaced at Marcus's newfound domestic cluelessness, something that had crept up on him during her nearly 4 years of maternity leave. Then one day, things reached a boiling point. Exhausted from caring for their sick child all week, Elise sat on the brink of collapse. That night, an argument with Marcus erupted into a full-blown showdown. Tempers flared, voices echoed through the house, and the fight was so intense that Marcus stormed off to sleep in a different room. By morning, he'd left for work without so much as a goodbye. After lunch, just after Elisa had successfully put her son to bed, much to her annoyance, the phone rang. In a hurry, she turned off the device and made sure that her precious baby was still sleeping peacefully. Glancing at the screen, she saw an unexpected caller ID, Marcus's father, who works from home. How strange, she thought to herself, but still plucked up the courage to answer the phone. "Hello," he exclaimed loudly on the other end of the line. "Well, hello," Eliza replied politely. "I would be happy to invite you to visit your beloved grandson and kindly take vitamins that can help in his recovery." An hour had passed when a soft tapping sounded at the door. Still in dreamland, Axel murmured, easing the door shut behind him. "Yes," came the hushed reply from his sister-in-law. Every time Elise encountered her father-in-law, she couldn't help but notice his youthful vigor. At 45, He was the picture of health, maintaining a steadfast workout regimen that certainly paid off in his looks. She set about making tea for them, and they found themselves whispering softly in the kitchen. "How's everything with you? You seem a bit down," Axel inquired. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Elise broke down sobbing. The weight of her troubles overwhelmed her so completely that composure was no longer an option. She wept against Father Marcus's shoulder, confiding in him her deep-seated woes. Axel tenderly stroked her hair, offering words of comfort and cracking light-hearted jokes to ease her distress. Out of the blue, Elise felt a kiss on her hand. Axel, locking eyes with her intensely, pressed his lips once more, this time on her shoulder. Elise did not resist. Only when the moment passed did she realize the gravity of what had unfolded. Hastily, she ushered her father-in-law out of her flat and darted into the shower, desperately trying to scrub off the residue of the past troubling hour. "Who we have over?" Marcus asked that evening, peering into the fridge. "Your dad," Elise responded with effort, the memories of yesterday still swirling in her head. Her husband nodded contently, pleased that his parents were doting on their grandchild. They had patched things up between them. Marcus had owned up to his mistake the previous day and offered a heartfelt apology. Elise had accepted it with a nod. The following day, Elise got another call from Axel. Gritting her teeth, she silenced the phone and stashed it away, determined not to give him the satisfaction. But just an hour later, Axel was already at her doorstep. "Get out, please," the woman implored. The previous day, they had transitioned to being on a first-name basis. "Let's pretend it never happened." "But I don't want to pretend. I've waited ages for this," Axel said, pinning her against the wall and capturing her lips in a fervent kiss. At first, Elise resisted, but soon surrendered to him. Guilt gnawed at her. She was not only unfaithful to her husband with his father, but her child was just in the next room. Yet she couldn't resist Axel. He was commanding, a bit rough around the edges, and full of strength. Marcus, however, hadn't inherited any of those qualities from his dad. Marcus came in just as Axel was leaving. After greeting his son, he nodded towards the box of fresh toys that he had brought for his grandson, so that he would not be too bored while he was unwell. Marcus had no inkling about what was going on. These secret rendezvous between Elise and Axel had been going on for several months. It became more challenging for them to see each other once Elise returned to work, but occasionally they still managed to cross paths at her place, when Elise managed to sneak away from work a few hours earlier. The very idea of being intimate with her own father-in-law thrilled her. One day, Marcus came home at an unusual time. He was taken aback to find the door unlocked. He immediately felt rage bubbling up inside him, blaming Elise for jeopardizing their property. But once he stepped inside the apartment, he was completely dumbfounded. There in the living room lay Elise sprawled on the couch, her hair scattered across the cushion. And towering over her was none other than his own father. Marcus couldn't decide what shocked him more, his wife's betrayal or the fact that his own father had become her lover. Marcus attacked his father using only his fists. Chaos broke out between them, and a scuffle began. Elisa quickly intervened, standing between the two opponents, clutching the plaid fabric tightly with her hands, trying to hide her vulnerability. "It's my fault. Don't do this," she begged, but Axel ignored her plea. He immediately denied her words, saying that he had long dreamed of it. Determined, Marcus lunged at his father a second time, but he deftly dodged. Axel quickly took out his mobile phone, dialed his mother's number, and begged her to come urgently. "Until Mom sees all this with her own eyes, no one is going anywhere," he said. Axel smiled wryly and returned to his place on the couch. Just the sight of his father's naked body was enough to make Marcus deeply disgusted. He looked away, refusing to look at those who betrayed him. Soon, the doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of his mother. When she entered and saw her husband next to his mistress, she showed no signs of surprise. Sighing humbly, She asked her husband, "Are you at it again? Gray-bearded and black-bearded, right? You knew everything." Marcus gasped, his voice trembling. His mother gave a weary shake of her head before laying out the harsh truth that his father's fidelity had always been questionable. She expressed no shock over the events that had unfolded, but she was indeed baffled by his choice of involvement. She couldn't fathom why he tangled himself up with his own son's family affairs and had the nerve to do it. After this revelation, Marcus's parents departed. At the farewell, Marcus made it clear that Axel should consider his son a distant memory now. Marcus's relationship with Elise came to a swift end too. He initiated divorce proceedings, gathered his belongings, and left. Showing remarkable magnanimity, he relinquished ownership of the apartment to his ex-wife, primarily for the sake of his son. Marcus reasoned that the child was blameless in all this mess and deserved the stability of a permanent home, not the instability of rented accommodations. Following the divorce, life threw another curveball at Elise. She was let go from her job without warning. In a scramble to find new employment, she faced an uphill battle. Employers were hesitant to hire single mothers with young kids. Financial difficulties began to loom large, and money became distressingly scarce. Elisa made several attempts to start a new relationship, but none of them brought results. One of the suitors seemed more interested in buying an apartment for her and her son than in establishing a life together, while the other two disappeared after a few months, leaving no reason for their sudden departure. Even Axel, who initially maintained a relationship with his mistress, eventually stopped all contact, ignoring her even during the holidays. Indeed, in search of communication, while women strive for perfection, men often look for novelty. Thus, Elisa was deprived of true love. For many lonely evenings, she thought of Marcus and cried. Alas, Elisa succumbed to a fleeting infatuation, mistaking it for the pinnacle of her life, only to feel abandoned and disappointed.